All right, thank you all for coming out. Today we have John Denza and Rajiv Abrol from IRSX and Circle respectively. And to start, we're just going to ask for a little bit of background. So just graduation year, degree, why you chose to go to Northeastern, what you wanted to do post-graduation, where did you hear about crypto, and how did you get into the industry?
A lot of questions, so I should go shoot you. I'm going to kick it off. All right, so my graduation year, as I'm embarrassed to say, was 1998. My degree was a major in political science, minor in communications. I started out at school studying physical therapy. Sciences and I did not get along. Anatomy and physiology degree. I was done with physical therapy at that point, and then spent some time trying to figure out what I wanted to pursue. I thought I wanted to pursue something maybe in law, so I started to go down the path of political science with a minor in communications. That's what I graduated with. My co-ops were mostly technology centric. So I worked at a company called Digital that doesn't exist anymore, Lowell Palm Partners, which was a PR firm. And then I also worked for a medical device company doing programming, which was definitely not suited for me. And then when I graduated, I was looking for a technology role and unfortunately couldn't find something in the space just because I had jumped around in a sense because I had been in, medical field. I did some technology, I did poli-sci, so I struggled. And for a year, I actually didn't use my degree. I was doing some construction work for a while. And then always wanted to crack into finance. I was always involved, amazed by the space and the potential and what, you're watching these shows on TV and these superficial lifestyles that you have, and you're this young person, you're like, I want to be that guy. So I ended up getting, my cousin goes for a job on an interview at a company called Island ECM, which was an ATS, which was kind of like an exchange. And he was too senior for the role. I took the role. And then that was kind of my entry point into finance. I ended up working on a trade desk, taking orders over the phone, and normally like at 3:55 on a Friday, I would fat finger an order, and then that was a chaos. But I worked my way up from the trade desk into managing a desk, and then the head of sales at the firm asked me if I'd be interested in sales, and I thought I wanted to be a trader and held them off for a few months. Then finally I said, let me give it a shot, and I never looked back. I've been involved in trading in the exchange space for 20 plus years. I worked for Island. After that, we were acquired by a company called Instinet. I did sales for them as well. And then eventually I moved over to a company called BATS, which was another ATS. I did equity sales for them, led the New York efforts. Then I moved over to doing option sales. And we eventually ended up being acquired by CBOE. And after the acquisition, there was a downsize, a RIF, and was trying to figure out my next spot and ended up getting involved in market data and connectivity for a little bit. But I would say, gosh, it's going on almost 8 years ago. My wife started looking at crypto, and I really was enamored with it. It just sucked me in with the potential. I felt like we were kind of like in the early innings of the asset class and had so much potential. And coming from the financial background that I had and the market structure that I'd experienced over the last 20 years, I just saw the potential where this space was going to go because I've lived it before, being involved in electronic trading and so forth, and started looking for a role. And I started aggressively interviewing. And I would say I interviewed at Kraken, I interviewed at ItBit, I interviewed at some other firms, and it ended up that the CEO of IRSX at the time was somebody that I actually was their coverage person when they were at Deutsche Bank. 6 months later, I was doing sales in New York, and eventually moved up to chief commercial officer for the firm, managing all the sales and BD efforts for the exchange. And then roughly about 6 months ago, I was acquired by SIBO again in my career, twice. It's the likelihood of that. And now we're considered SIBO Digital. So I handle all the sales for them. It's my quick story in a nutshell. You right?
Mine's a lot shorter.
I got a couple years on it.
So I graduated out of school December 2019. I was finance and entrepreneurship. I did 2 co-ops while I was in school. One of them was at Norfolk and Dedham, which is a mutual fire insurance company that started in 1828. And then my second one was at MFS, Investment Management. When I was at MFS, I realized that TradFi is not the route I want to pursue in life. Just looking at how they manage their systems, how I had to reconcile trades on 4 to 5 different platforms. And that's when I got like really aligned towards blockchain. I was always a crypto trader from like 2016, 2017. So it was very much of a like no-brainer that blockchain was the way I wanted to go in life, and just really understanding depth on how it can make the whole payments ecosystem much easier. So I graduated out of school. That was a very dark winter for crypto. I don't know if you guys remember 2019, right? Some really dark days. At that point, I don't think Circle was doing great either, right? Circle was almost at the brink of bankruptcy. We came out of that. And so I joined a startup from Circle called Elson at that point. I was an account executive. I was selling mainly it was a platform as a service for financial institutions who wanted to digest data from multiple different data sources. So like Definitive, WorldScope, I'm sure you know all these data sources. So like it was just a platform where you could bring in all data and have it on one basic screen. Shortly after, data aggregator. Yeah, exactly. We were aggregating data from a bunch of different sources, cleaning it up and showing it to them on the platform. We had Alliance Bernstein and Franklin Templeton being our clients. So we had 2 big clients. My wife got pregnant. I was like, okay, I need to make more money in life. Children are not cheap. So I was looking for a new job. I moved from Arizona to Boston, thinking that I would get a great job in Boston, but I found Circle, which is completely remote. And here I am, still in Massachusetts. I'm a customer success manager here at Circle. So what do? I take care of our API clients, what type of APIs we have, payments, payouts, accounts API. So if you want to swipe a credit card and get USDC, you come to Circle, we will give you APIs. You can allow your end users to swipe credit cards, send wire transfers, send ACH, and we provide USDC to them or you, depending upon what backend system you build in place. Yeah, so I came across crypto really early on. I lost a lot of money, and even doing up a lot of degen plays and getting into a lot of LPs and just doing a lot of trading, something I realized is that what is one of the most basic function of a digital asset today, which you can use and actually make use out of, right? It is a stable coin, right? All the other assets are a great way to invest money and build upon and build a community and build a decentralized application on Ethereum, Solana, whatever chain you want to be native on. But just go to think about it. Think about it 3 times. Ask yourself, what is the real life use case of digital assets today, right? I'm sure NFTs is another really good one, right? Where you can have, mechanisms of like just verifying if this product is real or certain other NFTs if you really want to get into that. But yeah, that's my perspective and something I'm, really working on. And I want to build an ecosystem where it does not take us 5 business days to send money from India to America.
What Raj is working on is a complete threat to the banking system as it is today, in a good way. I mean, if you think about it, if you're moving dollars through the financial system right now and you're trying to do it internationally, they use what's called the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system could take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days to move money. And they charge up to 1% of the total notional value that moves through the system. So this archaic system is just dragging down all these institutions. You use USDC, you can move those funds within seconds for a fraction of a dollar. What XRP was doing originally, and that's why XRP became so popular back in the day. So,
yeah, thank you for adding that on.
Thank you for sharing more about your background. Now, would you be able to elaborate on what you think is the most challenging aspect of working at your respective companies?
Yeah, I can go.
yeah, of course.
So crypto is a challenging industry in itself, right? When I say that, I mean that there are new regulations coming out in different geographical locations on a monthly basis. There's new regulation coming out in the United States, I would say very often in terms of like how they want to, really regulate digital crypto assets, which are volatile compared to a digital dollar, right? So I find that challenging in a way where we have to work with traditional companies. When I mean by traditional, I mean by enterprises like Walmart, right? To get them to use USDC. That is a challenge. it is a challenge for me to, like, do you guys have a wallet of USDC? Like where you can spend money from? I'm like, just raise your hand. How many of you have a USDC wallet? Yeah, see, that's like not even 10 to 15%. That's a
You
challenge.
guys are
right
all
here.
holders, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, what I think, when I will be really, I wouldn't say satisfied, but like something which would make me happy is that when everybody in this room raises their hand and can say that, oh, I can freely spend my USDC at Symphony, basically. So that's a challenge.
I would say for me, being in the exchange space, it's the regulatory landscape. You're dealing, is crypto considered a commodity or is it a security? In our eyes, we view it as a commodity and we're aligned with the rules of the CFTC. But for the adoption to happen and for the maturity of the space to occur, you need to actually develop new products. It's most of the products are being used, but they're not regulated the same overseas. And what I mean by that is introducing futures on crypto, introducing options on crypto. Because right now, if you're only trading the spot price, if you're an institution trying to get involved, there's tremendous risk involved. You can't hedge yourself. So you're going to either get all the downside or the upside risk if you're only trading the spot price. If you can hedge it with another product, that's going to bring in institutional adoption. So we've actually had our margin application in with the CFTC for over a year and a half. And it's one of the reasons why the CBOE had decided to acquire us, because they saw the potential of being able to have a cross-margin product in the sense that you could trade the spot and the future at the same time, put on a trade between the two of them. That's where the maturity is. And it's really coming down to the regulators getting comfortable. And unfortunately, when you work at the SEC or the CFTC, they're very hesitant to make a decision on their watch. God forbid something goes wrong. And they're more concerned about getting, my own opinion here, to the private sector.
And to your point, I was living in India for a bit, so I had the privilege of using FTX, which was not US, right?
Yeah.
And it looks very different than how FTX US is.
Absolutely.
The amount of various different types of assets which I can trade on FTX, not US, is incredible. The spots, the margins, the derivatives, it's amazing. But then when you come to the United States and you log on to your FTX platform, there's not a lot you can do. So that's like, to his point, we need regulation in the United States, which basically, just tells us this is what it is, this is what you're allowed to do, and because right now we are in a world of ambiguity. We don't know what's happening. We know that lawmakers and policymakers are thinking about it, but when are they really going to implement it? That's a big question.
But it speaks volumes too, the fact that there was an executive order from Biden recently tagging all the different groups within government, asking for their opinions. It means a lot to the industry because it's actually catching the eye of the executive branch in a sense. And then just to grab one of the points you made, speaking of these other exchanges, you even have products like BitMEX and FTX that offer 120-to-1 ratio with margin. Think about that. You could put $1 in collateral and get $120 to gamble with on that product. There's no way something like that's ever going to get approved in the US because of the dangers to retail.
So given all of these new regulations and crypto being somewhat of a daunting space to kind of get your way into, do you see any opportunities at Northeastern that students should be leveraging in terms of breaking into the space?
I mean, co-op is one of them. I mean, I loved my co-op experience, and I learned not just about the space in general, but what goes on in an office too. It's such a huge leg up compared to everybody else. And I mean, and then also on top of that, something I regret is not leveraging all the resources. I have a son that's going to college now and going through the orientations. Like, these were things that were available to me that I didn't take advantage of, and I look back and I regret it.
Yeah, no, and I would plus one on that. Just to add on, what you guys are doing here, how many of you are in this room? Doing this is important at school, right? Attending these type of events is very important, I feel like. I just graduated out of school like 3 years ago, so I can really correlate to say I was also the co-founder of Disrupt. I don't know how people know Disrupt. So, I was really into making sure I can put myself out there, network. Networking is key, right? If you can network and really hear from industry leaders on how things are happening and hearing from like people in just real life, because there's only so much you can learn in a classroom, right? There's your syllabus, you follow that syllabus, your 10 years classes, you do your participation and you get an A. But what else can you do, right? Is attending events like these, basically.
Raj, you make a great point in the sense that I would say the last 3/4 of my career have been all the jobs that I've gotten over that period of time have been through networking. I've never applied to an ad that I saw on LinkedIn. It's been people saying, hey, you should talk to this person. This probably fits your background. And that's how important it really is, so crucial that you network and build a group of people that you can depend on. I mean, the role I took at RSX, just to give you some color, that person, I was his account manager when he was at Deutsche Bank 15 years prior to me reaching out to him. I reached out to him and he remembered the experience he had dealing with me, and he opened the door and let me go in for an interview. I wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else.
I agree. That's basically how I got my first job out of school. Zach Shepard, he was the co-founder of Epson, and we had invited him to one of the first panel discussions for Disrupt, going back in time. And yeah, I was able to ask him, hey, are you looking for somebody right now? And he offered me an account executive job. Getting an account executive job right out of school is very hard. So I would definitely give networking all the like credit over that. Yeah.
Kind of going off the point of being a student coming to break in industry, where do you see the most potential growth in blockchain for students? Where should they be focusing their attention?
So Raj is in a great industry payments. He's definitely, that's an area of growth. But
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I really believe in payments, and I would like, coming from an international background, I can correlate to the pain which my parents went through when sending money from India to here, and even back, right? Even if I want to send them money to there, I get eaten up by fees all the time. So that is something, which is very personal to me. So I would say, but there are a lot of companies solving this for us. Like, I don't know how many of you all know MoneyGram, right? MoneyGram is all across the world. MoneyGram has USDC wallets, and we are actively working with them to have local on-ramps into USDC all across the world. So that is something where I feel anybody who has some sort of knowledge about how the money moves across the globe, you can really solve. It's an active problem, which a lot of people are trying to solve. And it is a growth area for a lot of companies as well. So remittance is a big business, and remittance on chain is a much bigger business. So yeah, those are just my thoughts. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I would definitely say it's the payments is definitely an angle. As I touched on before, compliance, as more of the regulators get involved in the space and you see traditional finance coming in. I mean, you guys might have seen how BNY started taking custody of assets. That was 2 weeks ago. BNY's got 45 trillion in assets under management. Now they're actually doing crypto as well. You've got BNY, you've got Bank of America, not Bank of America. Thinking of for example, like PayPal. PayPal introduced crypto and 350 million people overnight had access to crypto. So the maturity of the industry is coming there. So what I'm saying is compliance, I definitely think is an area that people should look into. I would say derivative, different products like I talked about, ETFs are going to be hot in the future. And even as the traditional finance comes in, prime brokerage, being able to go to Nomura and say, I want a PB with you, and having access to research, lend, trading access, market data, being able to have an all-inclusive solution with an institution, instead of that institution having to go to 10 different exchanges and having to build up the infrastructure to support that. They have one pipe into that PB, like Falcon X is a big one in the space right now. Coinbase has a prime brokerage solution. As the industry evolves and more institutions come into the space, they're going to be looking for services like that.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what I just mentioned, AML and compliance is big, and we definitely need a lot more expertise in that, just that vertical of crypto assets in general, is because it's new, right? like we rely on counsel to make decisions. And if we don't have the right counsel, it's, very difficult to make a decision in this space. So, yeah, compliance, AML, and I'm a big fan of custody, right? And by custody, I mean direct custody, custodials, right? So like, Circle has a vision of being the AWS for blockchain, right? So we recently launched something called as Web3 services, which is having the ability to direct custody your own digital assets. Circle was a great platform to be able to on-ramp fiat to USDC, USDC to fiat, but we were never able to provide our merchants the access to, okay, here's your vault, right? I don't know how many of y'all know NPC technology and vaults. Here's a vault, deploy your wallets, set a group of policies. This is your multi-approval workflow. And it's like a savings account, make a check a workflow to your bank account, right? So that is where Circle's heading towards. That's the vision, right? So these are the times when developers really work on the product, right? When a lot of people are not paying attention to the prices, the devs at the back end are building the products. So yeah, no, that's just, like I think custody is big. And if you can get into the depth of digital custody and how financial institutions are going to custody, even moving forward, like how BNY Mellon, just made an announcement that we will allow, digital assets custody. That's big. That's massive. That's just an announcement that a lot of other banks are going to look into it and they're going to want to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of custody, you even had the news. This is what I was trying to remember for BlackRock. BlackRock agreed to be custody with Coinbase recently. BlackRock's probably the largest holder of every stock out there in the universe. They're in the top 5. And for them to be getting into the space, that's huge. And then also to take the custody component further, one of the challenges in the space is moving things out of cold storage into hot and getting it out on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Well, there's services like Fireblocks and Copper that are coming out with these networks that kind of sit on top of the blockchain network that give you the ability to quickly move coin instead of having to get it out of cold storage. And that ability, I mean, that's why a company like BMY even invested in Fireblocks.
Yep, and to your point, Fireblocks is a great partner of Circle. They just launched a beta with Circle, which is basically you can integrate Circle APIs on the Fireblocks platform, hit the Circle APIs from the Fireblocks platform, and USDC will get minted and custodied in your Fireblocks platform, right? So because we have so many capital markets customers who want a robust MPC wallet. When I'm saying an MPC wallet, it's a multi-party computational wallet. It is different from multi-sig. Multi-sig is on-chain, MPC is off-chain. And MPC is really good, especially if you want to deploy a technology on various different chains, right? Multi-sig is very specific to one chain and it is not chain agnostic. So I don't know how many of y'all know like the difference between MPC and multi-sig, but MPC is the way to go. And Fireblocks gives MPCs. So does Circle's new tech. We acquired Saibao recently, and Saibao offers basically MPC wallet solution to our merchants. And Saibao is a company from Taiwan that Circle recently acquired. Yeah.
So given all of these areas of growth within crypto, what do you see as important skills for people to have that are applicable in the industry, and how can prospective students wanting to break into the industry prepare themselves for it? I'll let you take that.
I mean, you got to have a passion for it. I mean, for me, I was an early investor, and having skin in the game for me was like, I want to follow this all the way through. So passion for it and belief that this is going to be the future of this product is one of them. And then how to break into it. For me, I'm constantly reading up on anything that I can get my hands on, either if it's people that I've already partnered with or I have on LinkedIn. People that are leaders in the space are constantly publishing information and their thoughts. I'll even, as simple as going on Google and typing in Bitcoin or crypto, you're going to get the top 10 to 15 news events that are going on. I mean, if you're staying on top of these things, you're ahead of 95% of the rest of the audience.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm that again. I would say passion, yes, definitely. And how involved are you in the space, right? Like, how much of an impact you really want to make on that space. Those are questions I would ask myself before entering, any blockchain crypto company, because it is volatile, and like I mentioned, it is a pretty challenging industry. But what are some of the skills, which you can acquire to get a head start in the crypto industry? Is be curious. That's the biggest skill you can have. Be curious about what's coming next. Keep reading Twitter, keep reading, whatever platform you use to digest your news. And because every single day something new happens in blockchain/Web3, and all you can do is be curious and learn.
And one other thing I would say too, just to expand on that, is buy crypto and move it between two wallets. It's as simple as that. Like if you do that, it's something as entry level as that, you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
You've learned the basics of the space.
Yeah, no, you guys won't believe, like, there's still, I would say, a lot of people who don't understand what MetaMask is. I can guarantee you that, right? I've hopped on calls with my clients and I've had to explain them how MetaMask works. So there's still a lot of education to be done in this world about, where we are heading. And people are getting curious. Everybody wants to learn. Everybody is like, oh, wow, okay. You work in crypto, you work in blockchain. Tell me, what do you do? We never got this 4 years ago. 4 years ago, people used to be like, oh, you work for Bitcoin or you work for whatever, and they would just be like, look down upon us. And now it's basically the opposite, right? Everybody wants to learn more about it. Everybody wants to invest in it, even if it's degen news, right? Even if it's Shiba Inu or Dogecoin, people want to touch crypto, and that's a big thing in itself. Yeah.
When I first invested in crypto, I was on a trade desk at CEVO at the time, and I was sitting with 6 of my peers on the sales team, and I told them I bought crypto, and all of them thought I was crazy and thought I was another tulip scam, and I was going to lose all my money. But so sure before, these people are now calling me looking for a job in the space and wondering how they could crack into the space. Yet they were the same people that were making fun of me for my investment.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure your portfolio is doing great.
Even with the downturn, my early investment, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
To kind of go off of what you guys are saying, what kind of news resources do you think would be most helpful for people trying to learn more about the space?
I have top 3, I would give. Cointelegraph, right? Really good. I have an integration on Telegram where they keep sending me notifications. It's amazing. And other than that, I think I already mentioned Twitter.
Block bills,
CoinDesk. Yes. Yeah.
And then, like I said, too, if you start to see the personalities in the space and you start to follow them on LinkedIn, you will get a wealth of information from them. And then there's also, too, on YouTube, there's so many people that are out there speaking and on panels and so forth. I mean, there's market structure conferences going on all the time.
YouTube is great. Great way to learn about. I mean, I'll be honest, I had a time from 2019 to 2020 when I was really in TradFi and I never really paid a lot of attention into crypto and degen. And I really missed upon the whole learning curve of going from layer 1 to layer 2. And I felt so left out. So what did I do? I went to YouTube and I watched 5 videos and I'm like, okay, makes sense, so yeah, +1, YouTube is great. I think there are a lot of people making a lot of money off of educating people on crypto as well on YouTube. So yeah.
So we've touched a lot on how students can prepare for the industry. And a big thing in any role and across any business is you need your resume. So what are some ways that students can build their resume, or what looks good on a resume when you're trying to break into the space?
You see a lot more than me, so.
They're looking for in a row. It depends on the role, really, to be honest with you. I mean, if it's a sales role, I'm going to look at the different products that they've been selling at. Maybe they've been an option or future salesperson at another exchange. If it's a product person, there might be certain pieces that I might be looking at in particular. It really just depends on the role. Like if I'm looking at a salesperson, I'm not going to look at the same way as a developer what my expectations are. So whatever life experiences that you're getting from your co-ops is a great start. I feel like when you're doing the co-ops, you're really learning about not just about the industry that you might be at the time, but you're really learning also about how to operate within a business too. Like you're learning the social parts and aspects of, how you interact with those people and how you're able to work together in a team setting in a sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so our quick suggestion, I don't know, it really depends from person to person. So if you really want a job and you know that you want this job, create a resume for it, right? And when I mean like create a resume for it, go read the job description, see what are the skills required, and make a resume as per those skills / requirements. It is cumbersome, but it is worth it. I guarantee you that. One of the other things which I've realized, which has really helped me on the resume, is that I was on the sales side, so I was selling, but I had some skills which were related to Python and machine learning and AI. It does not matter. I'm sorry to say that, but if you're going to business and selling, learn how to sell and be good at talking. Nobody cares how you develop, right? It's good if you understand the tech, you can talk about it and all. That's great. But if you're a developer and you really want to develop and work in smart contracts and build contracts, focus on that and really highlight that on your resume, So that's just my perspective. And I made sure I highlighted my deals, I highlighted how much I managed, I highlighted, how many deals I've closed in the past 1 year. And that's what really mattered, right? Nobody went down the line and saw how good I was in school or how good I was in Python.
Yeah, to expand on what you're saying. So when you're on LinkedIn, there's certain buzzwords that people are going to type in when they're looking for candidates.
Yeah.
And like within my opening piece that describes me, I have several buzzwords that if somebody's looking for business development, sales, trading, these are interwoven into my resume so that my resume will come out in that search for a candidate.
That's a good one.
So do you think people that want to break into the blockchain space, is it necessary that they have a co-op within the blockchain space, or do you think any business or finance will is good?
I'm sure, it does not matter where you come from, right? What really matters is what you bring to the table, right? And how quickly you adapt to the technology, right? So I'm sure anywhere, any crypto exchange you go to, anywhere you go, you can really learn what is happening quick. But what really matters is what type of background / knowledge you bring to the table.
I think one of the big things too that I think that some people might miss on, and I try to instill this in my own son, is do your homework before you go interview with somebody. You'd be shocked at how many people, whenever I go for an interview on a company, I must spend at least 2 hours researching everything on the website and everything that kind of branches out from there so that I understand the whole industry, so that when I go in for the interview, I've got my stock questions lined up. Even if they're going to be repeated 4 or 5 times with all the different people I'm going to talk to, it shows I made the effort. And I personally too, speaking of the interview process, I'm old school and some people don't do this, but I think it really means a lot when somebody writes 2 or 3 sentences to you afterwards, thanking you for the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say it's an art form that's lost nowadays.
No, 100%. You have to send them the message.
Show your interest, show your
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah. No, and it can even be like you mentioned, just 2 lines. It does not matter. You don't have to get into the depth of what you guys spoke about. Just thank the person for their time. It just shows you care about their time. And you really care about that interview they had with you as well. And just to piggyback on your question, which is what are some of the things which you can bring to the table as well when you are doing that interview is be willing to learn. That is big. Yeah, just be willing to learn. And if you're good with tech, it's great. But then just stick to coding and developing. But just take a look at the whole PE business sales side of crypto. We all are new to the industry. I never sold crypto 2 years ago. I just started, working for USDC a year ago. So I came from fintech to blockchain, even though it's all fintech. But not a lot of people are crypto native, which is one of the most oldest crypto company in the United States where you can find employees from, probably Coinbase, right? I don't think there are a lot of companies which go 8 years back. Crypto. Yeah.
I mean, the space is evolving. Traditional financial players are getting into the space.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more and more, hey, there's a guy from Goldman going over to this crypto firm, or, Nomura, and he's joining another crypto firm. They're all making the migration, which just further highlights the point that we're in an evolution of the industry right now. Crypto-centric firms have taken the industry to this point. For us to take it to the next level is when the traditional players come in, the BMYs, the BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, those players getting in, and the institutions that do business with them, it's going to be the next leg up of growth.
So like, think about this. I hate to, generalize these Web 1, 2, 3, but it's the most easiest way of explaining it. How did Web 2 prosper? Right? It prospered because of Web 1. If there was no Web 1, Web 2 wouldn't exist, right? Now, how would Web 3 prosper? We need Web 2 to come in, right? We build the whole Web 3.
Which is you're identifying an opportunity for inefficiency in the market, and that's where it grew.
Exactly. And it's just the time, folks really adapt / adopt to the tech. It's going to take, probably another 4 to 5 years. But I think we are at this point in life where every single enterprise financial institution is taking a look at it right now.
Absolutely. You'd be amazed. The names that I'm seeing come across my desk now, it's unbelievable. I mean, like Cowen, Gold. These are players, Morgan Stanley, like players that didn't want to touch the space that are now like, they're being forced almost by their clients. They can't avoid it anymore.
Thank you. And to switch gears a little bit, do you find it risky to work in the blockchain space as opposed to an industry with less development?
I don't, honestly. Because I think I really I chose a company which is one of the most safest crypto companies to work for. But it can really depend from which specific vertical of crypto you are, right? That being said, you never know what happens tomorrow. But do I feel threatened? No, because I know that there are other 925 people working towards a similar mission. So I can go to sleep at night. But that being said, is it gonna automatically happen? No, you're always gonna have to make it happen. So yeah.
For me, thinking of the industry and the development of the industry and the volatility, I think it's a misnomer in a sense. I think there's certain events that cause there to be volatility. But for example, think about Tesla stock. Tesla stock was maybe $60, $80 3-4 years ago. It's gone through a couple splits, and it maybe if the price is like 50x where it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Bitcoin was maybe hit a low of around 5,500, 6,000. It's trading in this $20,000 range. That's 3x. So that's a misnomer, I think, that unfortunately has been put on the industry about the volatility. I think what's going to really help the industry is putting in risk safeguards. The reason we just had this recent downturn was because there was leverage in the space, and people that were offering this leverage did not have the proper oversight and tools and regulatory oversight to prevent it. That's why you have a Genesis, a Voyager, and others that are just Celsius, that it just blew up overnight. I mean, you've got firms like 3 Arrows Capital, 3AC, who's borrowing from all of these firms. They didn't have any view into the borrowing. And then when you borrow, you have to borrow on margin, which means that if you come through and you erode into your collateral and you have no more collateral left, you got to sell out that collateral to prevent yourself from bleeding anymore. These firms didn't do that. And unfortunately, there was a conflict of interest in some of these firms because 3 Hours actually invested in some of these firms. So how are you going to tell an investor, we're stopping you and we're going to liquidate you? That's why almost like in the DeFi space, margin is so much better because there's no debate. It hits this level, we liquidate, and that's it.
Thanks for all of that. Now we're going to open up the speaker session to you guys. If you have any questions that you want to get answered, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I really like some of your content with how you want that market to be. You also just touched on derivatives. What are some things that you are you more for off-chain derivative development? So crypto derivatives, like legalized and just stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to see in the space right now is you've got the CME and ICE is back trading futures products. The challenges there is the one that's on the CME is a cash settler product. So it's not really the underlying of the Bitcoin price going off of the financial part of it. The backed one is a bit challenging because it's got a settlement cycle that's similar to equities. It's T+2. So you're basically being stopped out 3 days before the trade's supposed to settle on the futures contract. And then to take it a step further, when you interact in the future space, you have to go through what's called an FCM, a futures commission merchant. It's almost like the speed bump before you get to the exchange because they add an extra level of risk there. So what happens at backed is those FCMs are almost closing you out now 2 more days before that. So now you're stuck in a position for 5 days that you have total exposure for it and you can't do anything about it. So if the market's going down, you can't get out of it. So we're pursuing our margin application, and because we're our own clearinghouse, we're able to, once expiry happens, close out this position in a couple hours. So as you think about it, institutions are going to want to manage their risk, and they do that through these derivative products. Did I answer your question, or did you have a?
I was just wondering, like, I guess what you personally would like to have in that, I guess, if the space, like, depots.
I mean, I'm a centralized exchange, so I'm going to always tout my own, horn, to my own horn. But I mean, really, what you need in the space is regulation to come in and provide guidance. The DeFi space, you're really not going to get that. The institutions, if they're going to come in, they're going to really want to play in the centralized space because that's what they're used to. They're used to, hey, there's a data center in this location in NY4 or NY5. I know it's bare metal. I know it's deterministic. It's not in the cloud. I know if I put the order in, I'm going to get an execution back in X amount of milliseconds, whatever it may be. So I think that those products need to be in the light instead of the darkness.
You guys see the next catalyst to mainstream adoption? I know we hinted a lot kind of where the space is going, but what do you think is the one industry that kind of takes us to that next level?
For me, I think it's the institutions and the banks getting involved in the space. Seeing like a Goldman saying that they're going to be the FCM for crypto. Seeing new participants like new retail coming into the fold that traditionally wasn't getting involved. I see that as a leg up from the trading standpoint. But the overall blockchain industry, what Raj is doing is the future of it from a payment standpoint.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I would say for USDC, it really comes down to enterprises, right? So Walmart, Amazon, even a few other e-commerce platforms, right? And additionally, retail people as well. So that is when I think that is going to be a big curve for USDC adoption. And one other thing which might take USDC to the next level is market incentives on trading, right? When market makers really take USDC seriously and use our incentive programs. That's a conversation we can have.
And even from the payment standpoint, think about JP Morgan. JP Morgan has a product now, I think it's called Onyx, where they actually, instead of traditionally their top 500 clients moving dollars between themselves and having the latency and friction of moving those dollars, they actually turned it into their own coin internally, move it between the two parties, and then once it's received the funds, they burn the coin. So that's the future of movement, reducing the frictions that are involved in the system.
Like a follow-on to that. So I know a lot of crypto native people from the early days are really big on decentralization. How do you kind of see the meaning of decentralization moving into the future? Because as more institutions get involved, there should be a higher degree of centralization. That kind of how do you
I envision them almost cohabitating the space together because I think that there's strengths and weaknesses to both. There's centralized nature to trading that I'm supportive and I think makes sense. Yes. Is there a borrow and lend? Does it make more sense to put that on the blockchain and DeFi? Yeah, definitely. So it's finding that perfect balance between the two of them. I don't think that one's going to be more dominant than the other in the future. You
So-
might have a different opinion.
No, I have it's so like, this is my perspective and, something which, I've done a lot of DeFi and I've done TradFi, so I can like, really correlate to it, is what is your situation at that point, right? But what I mean is that there are very few people who would use DeFi if they have a lot of money. If you have a lot of money, you're probably getting mortgage or loans from the government at interest rate, right? Probably like 10 to 15 basis points away from that. If you don't have money and you don't have an SSN and you don't have a good credit score, what is one way I can borrow money? DeFi, right? I have some collateral, I put it down, I borrow money and I use it. But see, DeFi still requires collateral, so it still requires me to have money at the end of the day. So that's what I really like, think like, what is the use case? What is my position? And how am I going to use it? Does that make sense? So DeFi is great. I love decentralized finance. I think like decentralized technology is great, right? But implement decentralized technology in real life doesn't work, right? We saw what happened with DeFi. It was leveraged and it crashed. Why did that happen? It's because it was a decentralized application, right? If it was a centralized application, somebody would have pressed the stop button right there and would have
Great
liquidated that collateral, right? So that's what I'm really coming down to. Like, I'm not saying that decentralized technology is not the way to go about it, but I think if we want to move with decentralized or like DeFi, whatever tech, it has to be, there need to be better rules and there need to be better smart contracts, which basically have quorums, which have basically specific thresholds for specific rules. And that's what we need to get to the bottom of. That's what developers need to get to the bottom of. It's like how those smart contracts build and what type of policies you can set in place in those smart contracts to, issue liquidation, for example, in a liquidity pool, right? We're not there yet. I think it's a long way because decentralized people are very hesitant on implementing centralized laws. So they would be very, very hesitant towards implementing certain rules and smart contracts as well. But there's a reason why traditional finance has been working for 150 years, guys.
I
Right?
mean, think about the opportunity you could have with smart contracts. Smart contracts are going to be the future.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it in the regard of, I don't know how much of the audience knows how a smart contract works, but I'll just give a rudimentary example. So I always use a vending machine example. So you're late at night, you're in a hotel, you want to go get a Kit Kat bar, it costs $1, you put 75 cents in the machine, you hit A3, nothing happens, right? So then you put the extra quarter in, you hit A3 again, boom, it drops. The whole concept of a smart contract is if I do this, then this should happen. Well, taking it a step further, the mortgage business would be completely changed to the better if we actually moved away from the traditional way you got a mortgage and created a smart contract.
Yep.
You don't have to pay for title insurance anymore. You can lock in your rate. You don't have the frictions of having to deal with all the paperwork and people and the different parts that go on. If you could just set a contract up, your closing costs are going to be reduced and the fees that you're going to pay are going to be reduced. It really is the way of the future in a sense. And it's so, I'm just picking one industry. You could apply it to any industry you can think of.
Yep, I think identity is another big one, right? Like driver's license, passports, and all of that, right? There's no way to edit that information and once it's on chain. So like I think identity is a really big use case which can be should be implemented soon. And yeah, no, so those are just
I was wondering if your experience working in like the cultural industry compared to like traditional industry, that how you work in.
For me, it's the pace. I mean, for me, I got stagnant in what I was doing. I've been doing it over and over. And you just see the promise on the horizon, the opportunity. I feel like we're only in the early innings of the potential of the asset class. And Raj made a great point before. Usually what happens in these bear cycles is people retreat and start to really work on the infrastructure. And you had so much funding sloshing around over these last couple of years. These people have built up war chests to actually invest in their product, go through acquisitions. So traditional finance was a great stepping stone for me because I learned a lot of the market structure. And I'm able to carry that over into the space and learn. And the other thing too, for me, working at a startup is you're wearing multiple hats. I'm not just, maybe in the past I was a sales guy. Now I'm the sales guy, the account manager, and I'm going to the product meeting saying, these are the products that my client's talking about, and services that they want us to develop. And I'm making a case and arguing with the product team, trying to position it in the roadmap.
Yeah, no, and I would say for me, it really came down to efficiency. I just found traditional finance companies being bureaucratic and inefficient. And when I went towards fintech, and fintech includes, blockchain as well, and companies under blockchain. So yeah, no, I thought those companies were efficient. It was great tech. We were building SaaS, which were, really making other businesses better. And that's what drove me, right? I would have worked at a financial institution and gone the traditional route and gone through the corporate ladder, but I'd rather go through a tech/fintech, which is making people's life better as well. I'll say that.
So kind of removing yourselves from the companies you work at. In the next 5 years, what would you say your idealistic kind of future for the space would be?
Good one. That's a good question.
For me, it would be global adoption, not even just from a payment standpoint, it's from as an asset class. Think about it, if everybody had in their portfolio 2 or 3% dedicated, most likely people in their portfolios are diversified. They have precious metals, they have real estate, they have equities, they have all these pieces. If everybody had 2 or 3% in their portfolio towards crypto and it was Bitcoin, price could easily skyrocket to 350, 400, 1,000 a coin, because there's only going to be 21 million coins ever created in Bitcoin. And probably over time, 25 to 30% of them are going to be lost or the passwords are going to be forgotten. So now you're down to 16 or 17 million. So kind of my thought about where the future is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm all in for it. I definitely think there's going to be adoption in terms of digital assets, and then there's going to be a whole different space where non-fungible tokens, which is ERC 721, 1155, and the Solana, or all the new chains which are being built on for NFTs. It's going to pivot. It's going to pivot in a way where how we had ICOs in 2016, 2017. We don't see them anymore, right? We see some real good tech, and we saw some good DeFi protocols come out as well. That's basically what happened with NFTs. We had a whole bunch of NFTs which came out, and we saw the price correction right now. And what's going to come out, the next wave, is going to be what is the real life utility behind that NFT, correct? So that's what I'm curious to see. That's going to be something which I don't know how it's going to look like, but it is going to change a lot in the future. It's going to be more and more communities which are going to rise from this whole adoption of crypto, and those communities are going to be that NFT token might provide you access to that community, right? So us coming to this Northeastern blockchain organization's event, right? There might be a future where, instead of you all having a pass to come to an event, you have that NFT where you can attend an event, right? So it'll be very easy for us to do that as well. Today, it's a little difficult, right? You need somebody to code smart contracts and really take that JPEG and implement it into a smart contract for you to put it on the chain. I think it's more and more startups are going to get built around these technologies for you to be easily be able to build on it, right? So go 10 years back in time, it was a lot harder to build an app than it is today. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to get just really easy for startups / new founders to build decentralized applications, and it's just going to lead to more and more growth. Yeah, curious to see that.
I would even expand too. If we're looking at the future, I really see the launch of an ETF really changing the space too. Because the ETFs that are launched right now are based on the futures price, not on the underlying. And that's where the struggle's been with the SEC. If we launch a product, you got to think the Qs are the largest shareholder of Microsoft, Google, and all the other components of it. Well, if you have an ETF, think about all the underlying that they'd have to acquire to support all those people that are buying that ETF. That's only going to drive up the price too because of the limited supply.
Thank you guys so much for coming. That wraps up this panel. Feel free to stick around to talk to Raj and John. We have a limit of 8, but thank you guys.
That's.